Welcome to the Netball Scoop YouTube channel. My name is Tobey Keddy, and in today's episode, I'll be joined by our journalist Georgia Doyle as we tackle the 2025 Suncorp Super Netball season preview. Who do we think was the standout from Team Girls Cup? Who do we think is going to struggle during the season? Stick around and find out right now. So Georgia, how is everything going?
Yeah, it's been obviously a hectic couple of weeks. I'm based out of Adelaide, so we had the Team Girls Cup here a few weeks ago. So got to see all the 8 teams up close, which was a really good chance to do a bit of a scouting report of what they're all looking like. I'm ahead of the season, which is only a couple of days away.
Speaking of the TGC, there were so many amazing moments that happened there, but also some really good insight into what the Suncorp Super Netball season will kind of look like.
Mm,
Should we kind of look at each team based on the Team Girls Cup results and see kind of how they're all fitting for the 2025 season?
yeah,
Let's start off. So, sadly, in eighth place was the Queensland
the
Firebirds.
Firebirds.
I know. So what are your thoughts about how they went at the Team Girls Cup?
Yeah, so they obviously had a very rough year last year. There's no doubt about that, but I think they're definitely starting to turn a page heading into season 2025, which is really exciting. You could definitely see across the course of the week they really built into the tournament, especially around that connection with Mary, who was obviously one of their big marquee signings, her and Imogen Allison both coming over from the NSL. And I think Mary was a little bit shaky in those first couple of games, but as she got used to the physicality, got a bit more of that connection with her middies. She's only been in the country for about, I think, 5 or 6 weeks. So she
Yeah.
hasn't had a lot of time with a lot of those players. So I can certainly see them building throughout the season as that connection continues to grow between her. Was there anyone from that team that really stood out to you or that you'd like to see a bit more from as the season progresses from the Firebirds?
Yeah, well, I really loved Julieta Veve. I think she was a standout
Mm,
for me. I think just having her consistent presence in that center position, both on the attack and defense end, was really good. I think what she kind of did was stabilized each end. There was a little bit of leadership. She also just took
mm,
control when she was in attack.
mm.
And I really like that from her. I think this is going to be a really big season for her, 2025.
Yeah,
What I
definitely.
did notice with them at the Teams Girls Cup was just their attack end was struggling. And I mean,
Yeah.
in terms of with no starting goal attack in there, they really relied on Abigail Latumiafau, who did a
One
really
of their
good
training
job and
partners.
exactly, who did a really good job just trying to bring some sort of connection in that position, but just not having that really strong goal attack to
Mm.
guide Mary in her first couple of games and to be that good outlet. I think they did really struggle in that regards. Just to quickly wrap up about the Firebirds, they did lose all of the games at the Team Girls Cup. And I think
Mm,
Kitty Wolves will be really looking for a recipe for to at least get a win during the season, but also a recipe for
definitely.
success consistently. What do you think the Firebirds need to do to make sure that they are getting wins on the board?
I think it's going to be really down to that connection with Mary and those feeders. You know, she's
Mm.
the tallest player that we've ever had in the Super Netball. She's got the ability to shoot from range. She's got that strong hold. She's got the mobility. I think she's going to need to be able to have those solid players around her so that Mary can do what Mary does best, which is hold under the post, get that ball from those feeders and pop it through the hoop. And then she's
Mm.
got that little extra trick up her sleeve that we've seen not only when she was at Loughborough, but also when she's been to Fast Five tournaments, that she can shoot from range. So she's not
Mm.
just a pony. So I think, yeah, it'll be down to that connection and making sure that that's firing and that Mary's got the confidence. That'll be really the key to their success for this year. Who will's come into the side this year? What sort of stuff she brought to the team?
Yeah, she's brought lots of different stuff to the team. I guess for us, it's just some of her New Zealand flair that she's brought to our team in terms of, I guess, off the body zones and stuff like that. And I guess just her experience coaching at the high level, she's brought so much to our team.
Let's segue into our next one, which is the Sunshine Coast Lightning, who came to see what that
Mm,
Team Girls Cup. Um, they were facing quite a inconsistent opponent, which the Sunny Coast were
mm,
during that tournament. Um,
definitely.
I think you could see that their training partners and their depth beyond the Diamond Stars that are in the team were
Mm.
kind of lacking in terms of confidence, in terms of game time, in terms of connection. And you saw that during especially the Mavericks game. I mean,
Mm,
they lost that by 21 goals,
yes,
34-55.
all the youngsters were left at it for that one, and yeah, it didn't unfortunately translate onto court for them, which was a real shame.
Yeah. So, and like we know that based on the stars that they have, Courtney Bruce, Liz Watson, Steph
Mm.
Fretwell, Cara Conan, that is an illustrious
Oh,
uh, team to have,
yeah,
and you can put any
absolutely.
kind of player with them. And I think, we were looking at the Team Girls Cup, their results. It wasn't as reflective as how we kind of see them going throughout the season. But I
Mm,
know that even with last year, they had some of those players and they still didn't make playoffs. So, what do
yeah.
you think it's kind of is for them to create a consistent winning formula? What do you think the Sunny Coast need to do next year?
I think the key for the Sunshine Coast will actually be staying injury free. You know, the reason
Yeah,
they didn't have Courtney Bruce was load management. The reason they didn't have Steph Fretwell, sorry, was load management.
yeah.
Lisa Maimai with the last minute omission, again through I think it was a calf or a lower leg issue. And that's all players who are part of their starting seven. And while they've got players like particularly in the defence end, Ash Irvin that can come in. Yes, she's a great player, but she's still not a Courtney Bruce. I think Courtney
Yeah.
Bruce just has this aura about her that strikes that bit of fear into the opposition. And Riley Batchelor has certainly come a long way since she's come back from that second knee injury, but she's still no Steph Fretwell. And
Yeah.
especially now that they've got Christiana Manua, who's come in for the injured Ava Black, I think that
Hmm.
sort of weakens that attack end a little bit because they
Yeah.
now don't have much flexibility through that mid-court, with Manua being more of that ring defender who's got the ability to cover wing defense. So they've now
Hmm.
really only got sort of two attacking middies to rely on in Lisa Maimai and Liz Watson. So I think, yeah, trying to keep the group injury free and sort of managing those more senior players, for want of a better word. I'm sure they don't like being called that, but
Yeah.
I think, yeah, keeping all of them fighting fit is going to go a long way. And I think
Yeah.
Cara Conan probably needs to step up a bit this year as well. I feel like she probably didn't have her greatest season last year. She had a bit of the yips. It's sort of been well documented that the super shot range isn't her comfort zone,
Yeah.
but that was then putting so much pressure on Steph that it just wasn't working out for them. So I think either she's going to have to lift in that 2 point time, or the team are going to have to look at a better way that they can bring Batchelor on so that it's not just in the last 5 minutes of the quarter when it's panic stations,
Mm.
expecting her to come in and be the hero. She played some really good minutes over the Teen Girls Cup. And when she started the games, she looked really, really good. She was
Yeah.
confident, she was moving, she was holding. She's actually surprisingly tall, so she can sit back and goal shooter and actually get quite a good hold on it. So I think if they can find a better way to incorporate her more seamlessly into the game rather than just as a large last ditch effort when they need to catch up with super shots, I certainly think that'll really help them as well.
And then a couple of really close games, three that were really sort of the whole way along. How important is that tight game experience heading into the
Yeah, absolutely. I think, again, just for our younger players coming through, as well as these combinations that we're developing in our front and defensive ends, I think that it's really good experience for us to put ourselves in those pressure situations. Making sure that we're aware of the clock, aware of what our plays are going to be, and making sure that we're all on the same page prior to the end of the game and the end of quarters. So, it's very good practice for us in a couple of weeks heading into round one.
Yeah, I definitely think so too. I mean, in the one game that we saw Courtney Bruce come on for a
Mm,
consistent amount of time, she spent a half against the T-Birds and she got
mm,
5 games within that half.
yeah,
And
yeah, she was
like
epic.
epic. And it was the fact that throughout the rest of the tournament for their defense end, like especially against the Giants and Mavericks, Irvine, Hinchcliffe, there was a couple of
Mm,
other defensive players they threw on that just there was no spark. And I think
mm,
that's what they're really going to have to look for this season is trying to figure out
yeah,
if Courtney Bruce, gets injured, which we're hoping doesn't happen.
fingers
But
crossed.
but in case something does happen, what do you think they kind of need to do in to make sure that they can still get those defensive gains and, make sure that they're able to stabilize the defense?
Yeah, I think that pressure through the mid-court is going to be huge for them. Obviously, we know that Lisa Maimai had a breakout season last year in her first year in the contracted 10, but she's not she's more of an attacking mid-quarter, so she
Hmm.
doesn't quite add that same defensive pressure as someone like a Mahalia Cassidy does through the middle. So it might be looking at adding that bit more defensive pressure out the front with a Cassidy in centre, bring Manua onto wing defence to add that extra pressure out there, just so that there's more chance to slow that ball down through the midcourt and give the defenders like Ash Irvin and Tara Hinchcliffe more of a chance to look at it. We know Tara's that really grindy type player who sticks body on body with her goal attack. So if she can do a really good job at shutting her goal attack out of the game, that's going to open up the chance for Ash Irvin to get her footwork moving and get really under the skin of that goal shooter, and hopefully not only sort of force some turnovers from the opposition, but also give her a chance to get out and get hunting, which is then going to really cause a spark and an ignition through the rest of the team to then fire them up.
You've welcomed Chris Manua into your team as a replacement for Ava. How have you been welcoming her into your defensive unit?
Oh, she's fitted in so seamlessly. She obviously brings a lot of experience and a lot of voice, and she's just so eager to learn what our setups and our plays are, and it's been great to see her out there in that wing D and that goal D position.
So next up at Teen Girls Cup in that fifth versus sixth playoff, we had the Mavericks who played up against the Giants. So Giants finished, sixth in that game. So what were some of the things that stood out to you about that Giants team over the weekend?
For me, it definitely was a positive standout, I think, was Jodie Ann Ward. I think whenever she was on the court, she was just a lot more comfortable in the Giants environment than I have ever seen her been. I mean, last season she seemed to be trying to figure out the defensive structures and seemed to be her playing style didn't seem to fit as well. And I think with the ability that she had in this tournament to play all three positions, and she kind of took that leadership role along with a really standout Erin O'Brien,
Yeah.
I think they did a really good job doing lots of switches and understanding that when there was a tall shooter, for example, when they faced off against the Lightning, I think Erin O'Brien was able to really focus on looking after Cara Conan and her switch
Yeah.
movements and her work along the baseline, where Jodie Ann Ward could just absolutely cover Wood or the goal attack.
Is there anything that you think is going to be key for the Giants heading into this season that's going to really help set them on that path for success this season?
Yeah, I think for them to make sure that they are going to be as successful as possible, it's kind of a double-edged sword with them. The stability conversation is that since they've had quite a stable lineup, stable coaching setup, that is a great thing normally for teams, is being able to have that consistency and knowing each other really well to work out of ruts and being able to grind out wins. As we saw last season, when they did win, it was a really tough grind, but they were able to work their way out of it and make sure that they did win the game. But I think that once teams like the Thunderbirds, like the Vixens, like the Swifts, they'll be able to really read those players and the plays consistently as well because they've had major
Definitely.
success in the past. So they're gonna have to find new ways and new plays and things like that to make sure that they can rise above that pressure.
Definitely, yeah. I think you've summed it up there, and hopefully with the injection of their new player, Hope White, who's come in for Gina Crampton as that attacking mid-court spot, I think she added some really good spark over the weekend of the Teen Girls Cup. So fingers crossed that she's a player that might get that little bit more court time because she's just going to, as you said, add that bit of spark, add that bit of difference for them, and make sure that other teams are able to have to sort of think their way through battling that Giants attack in, because even Leather Barrow, when she has had that bit of court time, it's often just in that super shot period. So most teams know how to defend that by now. So I think
Yeah.
having that opportunity to bring someone on like Hope White will just really add that point of difference for them this year and hopefully lead to some success for them this year.
Talk about some of those fresh kids. Hope's obviously come into the team
Yeah.
as a replacement for Gina as she awaits her first child.
Yeah.
How's it been bringing her into that sort of full-time environment?
Yeah, she's a little cracker. She's got a great personality, fits well with us girls, and an unreal netball player. She's a real little star in the making, and I just love to watch her shine every training and every game as well. She gets out on court, so super happy for her and just love watching her flourish in our environment. She's so good.
So the team that the Giants came up against in that 5th-6th playoff was the Melbourne Vixens. Now, I think there were probably a few of us that were surprised to see the Vixens down in that sort of second half of the ladder.
Absolutely.
The Teen Girls Cup, knowing that they obviously played in that premiership last year, even though they didn't quite come away with the chocolates. So what was your sort of summary of the Vixens over the course of the weekend of the Teen Girls Cup?
Yeah, well, my real standout for Team Girls Cup actually was Kate Maloney. And I know that she's been a massive player for many a years now. But I think just seeing her since the departure of Liz
Mm,
Watson, sorry, to the Lightning, I think she's really taken that leadership role, and you can see in her composure, in terms of leading that attack in, and also her tenacity on defense. I really love seeing on a consistent
mm.
basis, and I think Team Girls Cup, she was every time she went up against someone, she practically defeated them or kind of nullified what they were doing. And
Yeah,
I think that was
absolutely.
an amazing kind of thing. I think she's at an elite level right now, like one of the best in the league. Um,
Mm,
and even in the breaks you could see in the Team Girls Cup, she was giving great advice to Rudy Ellis, who was quite confused about something during one of the games. And
yeah,
Kate Maloney took her aside and was like, "This is what needs to be done. You know exactly what you need to do, and just do it and be confident in it." And I just
yeah, back yourself in.
loved that. I love that she was
Mm,
able to do that. And it's definitely going to help her elevate her game to such the next level, which is unbelievable if she does get to do that. Um,
yeah.
and in terms of their attack, I really loved when they switched Kira Austin and Garvin around. So instead of just doing the normal Garvin to goal shoot and Austin to goal attack, which we have seen for the last two
Mm,
seasons, having that element where Garvin went to goal attack, which she did that at Magpies, and we saw there was a little bit of heated discussion online around her,
mm.
what she was doing at goal attack, but I really loved what she was doing. I think what Austin was doing was drawing the defender out of the circle, and then
Mm,
Garvin could, at goal attack, create a lot of space and then do her normal drive towards the circle and hold.
mm,
And even though that's not quite a traditional goal attack role, I think having that point of difference at goal attack actually worked really well in certain games at the Team Girls Cup.
agreed. I think, the Vixens, they've also had a very stable lineup similar to the Giants that we were just talking about. But I think
Hmm.
the Vixens every year, they might even, if it's just bringing in one new player or a couple each year, they're then able to sort of draw something new out of them that then adds to their lineup, or they're bringing in players that are different to the players that are already part of the team. So even though that core group of, yeah, your Joe Westons, your Kate Maloney's, all those players have been there for many years, they've got that ability to sort of bring players in that value add to what they've got going on and then allow them to just make small changes so that the team doesn't have to learn a whole new style of play. But yeah,
Mm,
they can just make that little switch up between Garvin and Austin. It might then mean that Garvin is still doing that bit more of that holding role, and Austin's out the front doing a lot more of that moving, even if she's back at goal shooter. But it does just add that point of difference that gets the opposition thinking that little bit more than they were beforehand. So yeah, I think that's definitely a real strength of theirs. We didn't quite expect them to be finishing in that fifth place at the Team Girls Cup. What's going to be important for them heading into the season proper to see them climb that ladder into that probably top 1, 2, 3 spot, which is where most people are expecting them to finish at the end of the season.
yeah. Well, I think for this kind of tournament, the Team Girls Cup kind of allowed the Vixens to try a lot of different combinations, which
Mm,
the normal SSN season doesn't really allow for that. And I think when they get a bit more of a stable lineup in terms of Garmin and Austin being in that goal shooter goal attack. You have Mundy, Maloney, Eddie, or Weston going into that wing defense, but a very stable midcourt and then a very stable defensive end. I think it will work them
mm,
wonders. I think this kind of tournament actually allowed them to, expose Lily Graham and bring on
mm,
Karis and see what they could do because they're obviously very talented players, as they've both been highlighted throughout this discussion as they did some amazing plays. But I think, yeah, it allowed them to test their depth. And I think the SSN season, they'll now know when to bring them on and see how they can kind of be impactful. The third and fourth playoff between the New South Wales Swifts and the Melbourne Mavericks. And
mm.
it was the Mavs that got fourth place, where the Swifts won 51-49. Georgia, what did you think about what the Melbourne Mavericks were doing during the Team Girls Cup?
Yeah, I think the Melbourne Mavericks were probably one of the surprise packets of the tournament. Obviously, they had Sasha Glasgow returning from her injury last year, so it was just fantastic to see her out on court. I think she had a really dominant tournament, and has shown that she is ready to hit the court running when the season starts soon. She doesn't look like she's got any concerns about that injury barring her from anything this season, which is really fantastic to see because obviously we all know it was a pretty horrific injury and then intense rehab that she had to go through
Yeah.
to get back on court. So I think it was really great to see her combining so well with Shimona Jock. Obviously, her first year now technically is a fully contracted player with the Mavericks, which is crazy to sort of think about the fact that she didn't actually have a full-time contract last year and that she just came in as a replacement player.
Mm,
But I think those two combined really, really well. Glasgow was nailing shots from range, creating space, and combining really well with those mid quarters as well. They were really impressive across the tournament, and they were obviously also missing a few of their other key players. Molly Jovic was out with injury as well, so she didn't play any minutes at all. And then Lauren Parkinson, who was Lauren Moore last year before getting married over the off season, she's still coming back from her ACL injury, so we didn't see either of those hit the court. And then Eleanor Cardwell as well was also missing. So they had a
yeah.
lot of their big names out for the Teen Girls Cup. So I think for them to still come away with fourth is really, really impressive. And also that bit of time that we saw Amy Parmenter spending at centre. You know, we've often talked about she hasn't quite managed to break into that Diamonds team as a sort of regular player yet because she is sort of pigeonholed as a specialist wing defence. And when we've got the likes of Kate Maloney, who we've already talked about as an amazing player, and then Jamie Lee Price as well covering that centre wing defence position,
Mm,
where do you find room for someone like a Palmy to fit into that lineup? But I think she played some really good minutes at centre over the course of the weekend, and she was solid there as well. She
mm,
wasn't throwing ball away. She had finesse on the feed. She was combining really well with Taylor Fraser in that wing attack position. So I hope that that's something that they look at using a little bit more throughout the season, because I think that's going to be, again, a nice little switch up for the Mavs to be able to play throughout the season. That's just going to change the pace a little bit of how the game's going, but while still giving Palmy that chance to do that really grinding defense and come out for those screamers that we know she really likes to take.
Was there anything else that you kind of noticed during the Team Girls Cup that you thought they could work upon for the 2025 season?
I think most of what they did was really solid. Once you bring in some
Mm,
of those other players back in, as you said, work out those little inconsistencies, I think they'll be flying. I
yeah,
think it'll be interesting when Cardwell comes back into the lineup because
yeah.
obviously Shimona Jock had an amazing weekend. So where Cardwell then fits back into that lineup is going to be really interesting to see because I think Shimona's not planning on letting go of that goal shooter bit anytime soon. And Glasgow obviously also put on a really good show out at goal attack. So they've got
Mm.
three really strong players. It'll just be how you best manage the minutes among the three of them that's going to be really interesting to see. So as we said, Swifts played off against the Mavericks in that third versus fourth playoff, with Swifts coming out on top to finish third for the Teen Girls Cup weekend. How did you rate their performance across the course of the tournament?
Well, of course, as a Kiwi fan, I was just so excited to see how Grace Nowicki was going to go. And I think when I was looking at the kind of feed she was getting, was it pinpoint? No. Like a lot of the times it was a bit wayward,
Mm,
or it was too short or something like that. And obviously they haven't been around for very long, so that will improve definitely throughout the season. I think it was the confidence for me to feed it in. Everyone knows that Grace Nowicki is right now one of the top five players of the entire, netball world.
mm,
She's an amazing player. Her ability to grab a ball that everyone's thinking, how did she do that? Or the ability to lift up teams that necessarily without her would not be in contention for any sort of win. As we saw last
mm.
season with the Mystics, I mean, whenever she was injured, the Mystics lost. And
Yeah,
she's
struggled.
such a powerhouse in that goal shooter position. So I think a lot of people were very excited. And I think they did well considering those
Mm,
factors I've just talked about. But one thing I'd really love to note is how confident Paige Hadley was this series. I
mm,
mean, her obvious high work rate was amazing, but and she's always had that ability to have a high work rate and feed kind of her whatever shooter and bring her attack into the game. But this was probably one of the first times I've ever seen Paige Hadley yeet a ball, I think is the best way
mm.
to call it, into that circle just to see if Grace was going to bring it in
Be able
or
to get
she
back.
was just throwing it in, seeing if it was going. And I really loved that because I mean,
Mm,
that is what's going to set them apart this season. Yes, I think
mm.
throughout the season. It might be a little bit rough at the beginning, their attacking, but I think they're going to really grow throughout the second half of the season and be a
Absolutely.
massive attacking threat. And I think potentially the biggest attacking threat of the entire
Mm,
tournament.
yeah.
Um, and in terms of defense, I think probably my one of my favorite defenders this tournament was Sarah Clow. And
Mm,
this was really emphasized during their really close game with the Vixens of round one, where they won by one goal,
yeah.
43-42. Sarah Clow, they had Lily Graham for the Vixens on that goal shoot, and Sarah Clow was all over her. I'm pretty sure Lily Graham maybe touched the ball about three times that entire quarter. And that's not to disrespect what Lily Graham was doing. I think Sarah Clow was just on another level
All
during
over
that
it.
game, was all over her, had every kind of play or
Mm,
structure down packed to break
yeah.
down what Lily Graham was doing. And I think that really forced the goal attack, who was, I believe, Kira Austin during that quarter,
Mm.
to work overtime. And if Sarah Clow can do that consistently, as she was doing during the Team Girls Cup, I think the Swifts are going to be on another level this season.
Absolutely, yeah. I think you could certainly see the work that their new defensive coach, Dylan Nexip, has been doing with those defenders. Obviously, the last couple of years, they've had Bryony as their head coach and Nat Avellino in that assistance role, who are both attacking players. So
Hmm.
I certainly think having that defensive mindset come back into the team after Beck Bully left a couple of years ago is going to do them wonders, because we know that they were quite a heavily penalised team last year.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, bringing in some new structures, getting that penalty count down is going to really complement then the powerhouse down that attacking end for the Swifts, and mean that they're back to being that sort of that full strength team of strong attacking end, dynamic mid court, and fierce but not over penalised defenders. And I think that's going to send them a long way into the season this year.
And Dill's awesome, especially him being a wing defence too and a goal defence. So can really lean on off him and pick his brain a bit. So I think he's been awesome for in this environment for defence, like for our defensive end especially. So yeah, no, he's been great to have around.
And last up, we had the 1v2 playoff, the final for the Teen Girls Cup, which was contested by the West Coast Fever and the Adelaide Thunderbirds. Now, there's lots of talk around the hoodoo of the Teen Girls Cup curse,
Mhm.
obviously, with no team that's ever won the Teen Girls Cup going on to win the premiership. So I think if there's any team that can turn that around, it'll be the Thunderbirds. But I think the Fever might have been quietly thanking their lucky stars that they didn't end up taking away the win in that final game. What were some of your takeaways for the Fever over the course of the weekend?
I mean, I loved what they were doing. I was quite confident, especially the game against the Firebirds. They won that by 15, winning
Mm,
50-35. They then played the Swifts, who I think a lot of us would have thought that the Swifts would have won based on the kind of players they had on. But the attack end of the Swiss was absolutely smothered by the
mm,
defensive end of the Fever. And what I loved about what the Fever defense was doing, especially during that game with the Swiss, was they were absolutely smothering. And
mm,
bringing in Ruth Ariang, Sunday Ariang, Fran Williams, Katie and Dehaney, and putting them in different kinds of combinations, and they were still going for ball.
mm,
And they weren't overly penalized either, but they were still quite aggressive in what they were doing. And they had a one-stop shop, get intercepts, get those deflections, and
mm,
disrupt the attacking play. And I think for me, a personal standout was when it was the two Ariang sisters together.
mm,
I think
100%.
everyone kind of thought that Ruth might play quite similar to what Sunday was doing at the front of her. But when Ruth was in goal keep, I think she was getting all sorts of deflections and intercepts,
Mm,
and she would not let her goal shoot have any sort of space. And I think having that kind of youthful kind of player in there at goal keep, just saying, I have nothing to lose, put, everything into it, and that's exactly what she did. So I really loved what Ruth was doing. Um, I think for the attack end, obviously Olivia Wilkinson was a massive standout this tournament. She was the bulk shooter for the Fever for this
mm,
tournament. And, not having Janelle Fowler-Reid, I think a lot of people kind of wrote off the Fever at least for the beginning of Team Girls Cup
mm,
and the season, just to see how they would work things together with Shanice, Olivia Wilkinson. But she was amazing. I mean, she averaged 90% in every game. She scored more than 20 goals in every game, including those that she only played for a half. She shot in the 1 point, she shot in the 2 point, she came out of the circle, she created a lot of different kinds of attacking structures we haven't seen from the Fever in a while.
Mm.
She held the ball, she held her space really well, but she also created different kinds of attacking lines. And I think for the Fever this year, that was probably a great thing to see, something completely different to what they're doing. And now that we have the confirmation, as of a couple of days ago, that Fowler Reid might be trying to return back to the Fever environment for at least the second half of the season. Um, I think having that ability to not necessarily overemphasize on Fowler Reid throughout the season, if maybe it isn't working, they can bring Olivia Wilkinson on and she will just do as well or even better in different kinds of aspects of the game. So that's what I loved about the Fever this tournament.
Yeah, 100% agree with all of that. I think lots of people definitely wrote off Fever as soon as they found out that Fallon Emhard wasn't going to be taking part in the season. But I think Liv Wilkinson's just taken that as a massive opportunity to step up and be like, no, look, Jay might be out for this season, but I can certainly stand up and play that role. And we saw a lot of her more so at goal attack last year. So obviously when you've got someone like a Janelle in your team, you don't need anyone else at goal shooter because she just dominates
Mm.
that role every game. So we saw much more of Liv out at goal attack. But yeah, I think she really stood up under the post. A few soft hands every now and then, but I think that's something that's just going to continue to grow as she gets more game time. And I think seeing how well they performed with Wilkinson back in that goal shooter bib, it's going to mean that that pressure is well and truly off Janelle. She can just come back when she feels like she's fully ready, knowing
Mm.
that the team's going to continue to succeed without her there. And then when she feels like she's ready to step back into that game day environment, then they've still got that ability to mix it up and make sure that they've got that versatility to their game that they haven't necessarily had over the last few years because Wilkinson will have had some really solid game time into her in the lead up to when Janelle makes her return, which is really exciting.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree with you there. And I would love to know, as the Fever did lose to the Adelaide Thunderbirds by 1 point, 38-37
Mm.
in that grand final, what kind of set the Adelaide Thunderbirds for the win in that Fever game?
Yeah, well, I mean, they were behind for most of it, weren't they? It
Mm,
was only sort of last probably quarter, I think it was, that they really sort of started to put their foot down. And then it was, a goal in the last 10 seconds of the game or something crazy like that that actually took the win. I certainly think having it on the Thunderbirds' home court probably played a little bit of an advantage to them there, obviously having that home crowd energy.
yeah,
But if you consider the fact that they had Shamira Sterling Humphrey not even named in the match day 12, I think they were playing with for that tournament. So
yeah,
she didn't take the field at all in that final. Romelda Aiken-George played a few, I think a half or a quarter of that game. Most of it was Lucy Austin.
yeah.
So you look at the fact that they were running with so many of their training partners, so many of their normal bench players, and they were still able to grind out that win, I think just shows the belief that that team now has off the back of those back-to-back premierships, especially when they went into last year's season having lost three of their players. I think lots of people sort of wrote them off a little bit and sort of thought, oh
Mm,
yeah, they'll still do well, but they're not gonna go back to back. And then they did it. So I think the belief that those youngsters like your Georgie Horges, who she's still only 22 or 23, like she's not very old.
which is
Taylor Lewis,
crazy.
even Garrett and Wilson, they're both only in their mid 20s as well, so they've still
Mm,
got so many years ahead of them. And I just think, yeah, the belief that that group now has from within themselves, they're not needing to rely on someone like Shamira Sterling Humphrey to come out and take a screaming intercept. They're not
mm,
needing to rely on someone to sink a super shot to get themselves hyped up. They can bring it from within. And I think that was probably really highlighted by that play of Hannah Petty. I don't think it was in the final, I can't remember which game it was, but flying over the bollards into the crowd just to keep a ball in play. We know Hannah Petty's always been one of those players that will put her body on the line to do whatever it is for the team that's needed. But yeah, I just think that internal belief that that group now has is going to do them wonders heading into this season because now all eyes are going to be on them even more because they've obviously done those back-to-back premierships. They're aiming for the three-peat, which no one's ever managed in
Thank you
Super
for checking
Netball.
out this week's
And
video
then,
here
of
on the
course,
Netball Scoop
with
YouTube
the,
channel.
with
Next
the
week
fact that
you'll
they
see
don't have
part
much
2 of this
change in their
series,
lineup either.
where we
Only
preview
one
the Suncorp
swap,
Super
which
Netball
was for
season
Australia
by
and
awarding our
Ireland to make
predicted
room for
breakout
the
player of the
Kale
year,
Graham.
our predicted
I think
MVP,
that belief
and
that
predicted
core
ladder
group,
for the 2025
stayed with that team for this year
You do not want to
is
miss these
certainly gonna be
results, so
hard to
remember
beat
to
heading
subscribe
into
for
this
more
year.
and comment down below for your thoughts on our commentary. Goodbye for now.